Welcome to I Love My HBCU ? The podcast where we express our undeniable love for HBCUs, but where we are also not afraid to address a few tough questions. So, sit back, learn a little, love a lot, and rep your HBCU. Guys, it's another episode, and it is absolutely another reason to love your HBCU by way of Dawn Jones and Texas Southern University. Dawn, how are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I can't complain. Dawn, before we started recording, and I always do this, I have these conversations with people before we go on, and I shared with you that you are my number 5 Dawn Jones that I know. And listen, the reason why I want to put this out there, I would love to see a Dawn Jones day. So if there is any Dawn Jones out there that happens to hear this, get in touch with the Dawn Jones that is on as my guest, or get in touch with us at I Love My HBCU ? Because I want to get you connected with each other. The fact that I, somebody who is primarily an introvert, knows 4 Dawn Joneses, I am curious as to what your parents were thinking when they were inspired to name you Dawn. And you said, how many do you know? Because you run into a few as well.
Well, I didn't always. So when I might have been in elementary school, we had a teacher named Dawn Jones, and she was actually a white woman. And then now my great aunt, on like my daughter's great aunt, her name is Dawn Jones. And so I'm seeing like different generations. And so to your point, I too would love to know the origin stories around it because I'm actually named after my dad. So my dad is Don
Wow.
Dawn Jones, and I'm Baby Dawn. And so, yeah, I would love to hear everyone else's because I'm a mini me. Like, so yeah.
Oh, that is beautiful that your Dawn, Dawn, actually comes from Dawn, your father.
Yeah.
I am not a Dawn, but if Dawn Jones Day happens, please consider me a special invited guest because I want to hear those stories as well. But I
Yeah.
digress. Dawn, I call you a social justice warrior from reading your profile. You have been in this work for a while. It is not new to you, and you have maneuvered in different spaces. Do you think that being a 2-time Texas Southern University or just an HBCU alum has anything to do with the choice of being a social justice? I'm going to keep saying social justice warrior intentionally, but do you think that they're linked in any way for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, it has everything to do with why I am. And people say social justice warrior all the time, so like you're not alone there. But sure, there was an upbringing. I had a specific upbringing that brought me to this point. But if it were not for my career starting at Texas Southern, University and having that sort of backing and them allowing me that platform, I don't think I would have been energized to continue on. So I mean, it has absolutely everything to do with why I do the work that I do now.
In 2026, I personally believe that anyone that isn't, you don't have to be on the front lines, but anyone that isn't getting their toe at least in social justice, social impact work, community activism on some level is choosing honestly to kind of ostrich, and that's just to keep their head in the sand. That's just my viewpoint, and it doesn't have to be loud, because there's just so much going on in the world, especially now. Do you mind, because you said there's a certain upbringing you had that brought you here, and then you being an HBCU alum, share with us what that upbringing was, if you don't mind, that
Sure.
kind of propelled this for you.
hmm So let me be clear. My major was education. Like I didn't even know that I was going to kind of go down this route. However, so my mom was a single mom. My father actually passed away in 1994, and so my mom was
Wow.
a single mother of 3. However, she instilled just pro-blackness in us almost immediately. Like I remember being maybe 4 or 5 watching movies like Roots and all the things. So my mom was so civically engaged and made sure that my sisters and I understood what was at stake for us as a people. And so we would go with her to go vote, and she would explain to us what that means. So much to where I think I was like 17 years old, and I was like campaigning for Obama. But I wasn't even old enough to vote for him that first time around. But I was so energized because of what I knew that it meant, not only to myself but to our entire community. So those are the things that we were always taught, and it was actually up until I got to TSU and started doing a lot of the student organizing, and I realized, like, hey, I have been extremely privileged because a lot of my peers don't have this information. And so that is kind of what set me up of being like, okay, well, I know all of these things already thanks to my mom, so like, how can I take what I know, and spread it with my peers here?
So it's interesting to hear now that you share with everybody that even with all of that, because I would have thought you would have either gone into criminal justice or you would have gone into, one of those types of professions that are directly aligned with social justice. But to hear that education is what you picked first, I'm curious as to why education, because I don't think they're diametrically opposed, by the way.
No, I mean, they're not. So I knew that I wanted to help people and I wanted to develop the youth and things of that nature. I will say the biggest thing that led me there was my mom was an educator. She
Okay.
was a principal for 30 plus years. And so like that's what I knew. But ultimately I thought I was gonna have a career in fashion. Like that's what I wanted to do. I had even applied to go to like the Fashion Institute, and my mom very fast was like, actually, you're going to go to TSU. So Texas Southern University was not even my first choice. I thought I was going to be a fashion girly. So my mom kind of corrected me, and thank God, because if it weren't for TSU, there would be no way I would be in this work.
So listening to you say that, I'm going to make sure we have the conversation passion versus purpose with
Mhm.
regards to what people end up picking. I always make sure I ask alum, especially, a question that I know our current students at different HBCUs are grappling with, and that's one of them. But before I do that, I want to treat you with our rapid fire segment where I'm going to throw as many questions at you in 67 seconds, and I can't wait to hear your answer. Are you ready?
Yes.
Let's do this. Describe your HBC experience in one word.
Awakening.
Awakening. I love that one. If your time in college was a song, what song would it be?
I really want to say a very sweet, like nice song, but you wouldn't know it. It's a very Texas song, but it's called Club Rock by Young Nation. But we still played at homecomings. It is like our go-to song. So I really want to say something a lot more symbolic, but I would be not being true to myself. So it's
Thanks for
definitely
being
Club
authentic. I'm going to go look it up afterwards because you're right. I don't know what it is.
Rock.
What would
Club
you
Rock.
have wanted to tell your college roommate but didn't?
Oh, okay. So I had a few.
Ooh.
My first one, I would say stay on campus. She lived like not far from our dorm, and so she would go home all the time, and I would be like, "Girl, like we're doing this, and we're mingling, and we're making friends," and she would be out of there like every weekend. So I would say stick around, stay in community.
If you could shout out anybody at Texas Southern, it could be a professor, faculty, staff, whoever, who would you shout out?
It would be Dr. Boyce. She was one of my supervisors while I was a campus ambassador, and she believed in me so much. She still to this day will check in with me, but she was so invested in my success to where she always, spoke life into me. She always made sure I was in the right places at the right times. She was one of the first people I went to when I was like, "Hey, I'm graduating," and so it would definitely be Dr. Boyce. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So I was just told our time is up, which I love, but I always like to just sneak in one more question. So I'm going to sneak in one more question. You are going to be somebody's commencement speaker someday soon, if it hasn't happened already. If you were a commencement speaker in 2026, what would be the core of the message you would want to give the students as a commencement speech?
I think the message would be around allowing God or the universe to just set you on your path of alignment. I was not a traditional student. I had my son in 2016, and I actually went back and got my undergrad degree and then went on to get my master's. But had I not had that space in between of becoming a mom and evolving mentally, I would not have changed my major to administration of justice. I wouldn't have gotten my master's in public administration. But it took me to learn life to understand that that was my path. And now that I look back, it was all around alignment. It was, oh, this
Hmm.
is what I was supposed to do the entire time, you know? So I would say stay the course and allow life to do its thing.
We could have a whole therapy session, just you and I, on stay the course. If you only knew. And allow life to do its thing. I like to write notes because I go back and I read the
Yeah,
gems of these conversations after the recording is over. Um, you are from Texas. You
yeah,
picked Texas Southern. Share your college selection journey. It sounds like, especially with having an educator as a mother, you could have gone anywhere.
yeah.
So, how and why Texas Southern?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it wasn't necessarily my decision in the beginning, but it was my decision to stay. Um, My mom is a graduate of Texas Southern
Okay,
University. My
okay.
aunt is a graduate of Texas Southern University. Our family is actually from San Antonio, and they traveled down here and kind of stayed here in Houston. So not only is it my lineage, but what made me stay there was just the ultimate culture.
Hmm.
Our family, that was the school that taught me that Black people were not a monolith. I
Mm,
was able to
mm,
engage with all of my people in different spaces. And so when I said the word awakening, it was because I didn't know that it was like that until I was surrounded by my people. And so when we have things like homecoming now, it means so much to me because it's like this is my actual family. So
I love it. I love it. Oh, yeah. You've mentioned stay in two different ways, but I want to go back to the first way that you mentioned it, and that was stay on campus.
mhm,
And I'm tying it to the word awakening and you realizing that Black people are not a monolith. Um, I find, and it might be for cost reasons, I find that there are several people that if they happen to be from that area,
mhm,
they end up staying at home as opposed to going to campus. And you kind of sprinkled a little bit on the importance of staying, but I want you to delve a little deeper, if that's okay,
yeah,
about what it means, because it's we're recording this in February. Some students are thinking about where they're going to go to college soon, and especially our freshmen in the fall of 2026. What I want you to pitch to them how important it is, even if it's just that first year, staying
mhm.
on campus matters.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I lived not far from my campus either, but I chose to live on campus for the entire experience. Also, I didn't have a car, so it wasn't that easy for me to get. So I had to live on campus. However, I did stress it to people like my roommate because that was an experience that I had just never had before. I mean, living in the dorms at Texas Southern University, I would wake up to hearing the band practice going up and down the Tiger Walk. You know, so I would wake up to hearing the Ocean of Soul. I would go to sleep listening to them practice. It was a constant
Wow.
thing. I could walk out of my dorm and be right in front of the student center where everyone was gathering, and so those were the experiences that stay with me. I have so many friends from all over. I'm born and raised in Houston. My closest friend is from Oakland, California. So I was also kind of brought into these other cultures that I never knew before. I didn't know how to do the Dougie and all those things. So I was introduced to all this newness to where it was like, I love this. I mean, and when you're brought up in an area where you're all going to the same schools, you probably went to the same middle school, same elementary, you do get kind of stuck into this very small little bubble. But it opened up my mind to the possibility of like, oh my gosh, we're so different. And like, we all love each other no matter what. And so, yeah.
I love it. I listen. A, I love it. B, I was an international student, so I could not have commuted if I tried. But I appreciated that, especially somebody that was coming from England as well as Africa, Nigeria specifically, or Gambia at the time specifically. I knew that Black people were not a monolith. I knew that, but experiencing it, living with others, it brings a different level of understanding. It brings a level of different acceptance that you would not, I don't think you can experience if you're still literally just at home and just coming and dipping your toe in and out. So listen to Dawn, guys, for those of you that are thinking about college for the fall semester. If finances are in order, because I know that's a big deal for a lot of people, but if finances are in order, please pick your freshman year first, at least, to stay on campus. I said I was coming back to passion versus purpose.
Mhm.
And that is so important to me. I used to be like a passion girly back in the day. Follow your passion, follow your passion, follow your passion. And then bills hit me in the face. And then I had to, rethink a couple of things. I listened to your journey, right? And your journey, I think you're one of the lucky ones where your passion and purpose, based on how I'm hearing it, kind of combined
Mhm.
and collided. And so it has allowed you to also make it what butters your bread, for lack of a better word. If you could pick passion over purpose, which one would it be? Or would you not pick?
Um, I don't know if I could pick one or the other. Like you said, I think I've been able to do a good job of combining them both. I would absolutely pick purpose. However, things that I'm passionate, they tie into my purpose. So I don't know if I could pick one or the other. I think they both tie into each other.
So I had to quickly write this down when I heard you talk about fashion. Because
Mhm.
if somebody were to ask me, based on what I've heard so far, which one's her passion, it sounds like it was fashion really early on. At least that's what it sounds like. And then purpose took over. And it does not mean you let go of the passion. Because I think, and it's why I want us to have the conversation. I have students ask me all the time, well, Dr. Tosin, I'm passionate about X. But my mom and dad have been like, how are you going to eat? How are you going to
Yeah.
this? How are you going to that? How you? And so they ended up making the switch. But I've also watched them let go of their passions as opposed to still bringing their passions along. What
Mhm.
would you say to those who don't want to pick? Because I don't think you should have to, but have to pursue one while still, what's the right word, Tosin? While still journeying through the other.
So, I think that's why I said something about just allowing life to do its thing. Because when I initially made the decision to become activated, I was a store manager at Forever 21. So, like I'm saying, I was
Wow.
actually into the fashion things.
Yeah.
But it was when Donald Trump was elected in 2020, in 2016. I literally just could not. It was almost an outer body experience to where I immediately made up my mind. I'm going back to school. I left my job, which I was getting paid very well. I was a single mom. And so I quite literally had to start over from scratch. But I was willing to do it because I knew that I knew this was my purpose. And so now, after years of placing that on the back burner and being like, okay, this is what I should be doing, I have things like my podcast, Pretty in Politics podcast, and I'm able to now kind of, because there would not be a world where I'm not able to dabble into the fashion
Mm,
because I love
mm.
it so much, but I allowed my purpose to take the front seat, and so now I'm able to say, okay, well, like I don't want to do it unless it's cutesy, I'm able to do those sorts of things. So that's why I said, like, if we're able to just like stay the course and let life do what it does, there's a way that it'll come back around for sure.
Okay, now let's get to it. Let's get to the social justice and the social impact part of the conversation that I've been dying to get to, and organizing and all the things that you do. And I definitely want to talk about Pretty in Politics as well. But before going there, I want you to speak to 2016 Dawn, who you just described how had an outer body experience based on the election of then 45. Um, I'm watching in 2026, and all of us, I don't even think it matters what political party you are in, and where your leanings are. We are mentally and emotionally exhausted. We are in constant flux of whiplash.
Mhm.
and we have to remind ourselves it's just been a year of the second go around. And this is how we're feeling now. There is deep exhaustion mixed with, yeah, but I have to do something. This can't be it. No, I have to do something. What do you say to the young people?
Okay, so I've been talking to a lot of folks about this now because I mean, I think the kind of reckoning that folks are having now around the ICE raids and the ways in which our government is responding, they are having the very same experience I had in 2016, kind of the one that I, explained to you. So for one, it is incredibly mentally exhausting. And so I would tell folks, take care of yourself first. I think because it comes at us from every angle, which is like media, it's on our phones, it's kind of everywhere, and we're just digesting this information. I would take care of ourselves, but then I would get activated, and I think maybe you mentioned earlier that there's literally a lane for everyone, and I'm not saying everyone has to join the movement and be a freedom fighter and be on the front lines, but there is a lane for everyone, and so I would first, educate yourself, take it slow. But I think the biggest thing is that there's so much going around us to where if we are not educated on what's happening right now, like fully educated
Yeah.
past what we're seeing on our phones, we really, are missing out. So,
What would be what, because that's a big one, and I run into the misinformation, all of us do, constantly. Um it's getting harder. What is your take on this? I'm finding that it's getting harder to decipher fact from fiction
mhm,
unless I am constantly researching. And I don't, just being bluntly honest, I don't have the time
mhm,
to be constantly researching. And because of that, sometimes I go into active support mode as opposed to vocal active mode because I don't want to say the wrong thing.
mhm,
I don't want to get the facts wrong. And there's no way you're going to say, oh, this is what Tosin said, and I passed on the wrong information with
mhm,
regards to a policy or a bill or a response that any one of our elected officials got involved in. It's getting trickier, I guess, is what I'm saying, Dawn. And as somebody who you are in it constantly, I don't even know if it's fair to ask you what can we do, how should we go about it, because there's several of us who are just confused, and it's not from a lack of wanting to do, it's from everything that I just said, starting with the misinformation.
yeah,
Help us out,
yeah.
Dawn.
No, I mean, I think to your point, majority of regular everyday people are in a place to where they are so consumed with life and the fact that our economy is crazy, the fact that everything in our administration is changing our everyday lives to where people are under overwhelmed as well. And so they are not feeling like, okay, they're like, okay, this is too much. I don't even understand all of this. So I think that's why with my platform, my platform, I've tried to make these things digestible. How can we explain these big picture things to everyday people to where they are not feeling so overwhelmed to where they turn it off? And so, as far as you trying to like say people are trying to figure out a lane to be in or what to do exactly, in organizing, there's a term called racial organizing and relational organizing, and that just means that you're literally organizing through relationships. You are talking to the people that you trust
Mm,
in
mm,
your network. And so that means if someone comes to me and they're like, Dawn, I don't understand this, I'm able to say, okay, I don't know all the facts, but I can point you to this person. And because they trust me, then they will then trust that the person that they are being directed to will give them some actual information. And so I understand it's overwhelming. I do. I think all of my peers understand too. And so I think it's on people that are in these spaces to make it easy for folks because
mm.
that's the biggest thing. And then also continue to place yourself up as a trusted source so people actually buy into what you're actually saying.
You mentioned organizing, and that is one of your expertise, at least based on what I've read up on you. Do you think we are doing a good job in 2026 of how we should be organizing, especially the youth in anticipation for when 27 gets out. Because we're all looking forward to the out of
Yeah.
47. Do you think we're doing a good job?
I think nationally, I can't really say if we're doing a good job or not. I see that there are like coordinated efforts, things like the No Kings protests and stuff like that. But I will
Yes.
say locally, people are really organizing. And so I would always recommend that if people are wanting to get activated, they should get with their local groups, their local community orgs, because those are folks who are organizing around the year. They are not just doing it around
Yes.
elections, they are not
Yes.
doing it based off of reactions. These are people that have spent years in the community, and they are kind of continuing on, what has already they've already set up for years, behind. So I would definitely say locally, people are doing some really good work.
If somebody wanted to start organizing tomorrow, a young collegian that's listening to you and hearing you and is inspired by you, what would be the steps that you would say do one, two, and three, where you don't get overwhelmed, where you're still keeping schoolwork on, as a priority, but you want to do something, do this. What would you suggest?
Yeah. I mean, it could be really simple. If you are in school, you can literally start student organizing. That's how I started my career. And that can look like just registering folks to vote. And you don't have to go out and do drives. You can literally go to your class and say, hey, like I'm a
Mm,
VDR, I can register folks. It can be very subtle. There's, groups on campus that, people can join, whether that be SGA or, smaller chapters like NAACP and things like that. But I would start on campus if you are on campus. If not, I would say again, find the local community orgs that are already doing this work and just volunteer here and there. It doesn't have to be anything crazy.
big.
I know for me, I was in school, I was taking 7 classes. So I was kind of just like dipping and dabbing in what was going. But enough to where you're understanding what's going on without, fully diving all the way in.
Let's talk pretty in politics. It's your podcast. Tell us about it. Tell us why you are excited to go on every single week and share the way that you do.
Yeah, so like I said, I think sharing information has been my biggest goal since I've kind of started this work. To the idea that everyday folks just don't understand what's going on, and so I just really felt like it was my responsibility. If I had all this information, it's like, why am I not sharing it? I do think that folks do a good job of sharing messages, which is like, make sure you register to vote, and make sure that this, but without giving folks tangible steps of how to do those things. I mean, here in Texas, it's incredibly hard to register to vote, and so if you're
Wow.
just telling someone, hey, go register, they're like, do
What
what
does
with
that
it?
mean? Yeah.
You can't even do it online. So there are so many barriers, for folks to get involved, to where I started to feel like if I am not spelling this out for folks, they won't become engaged. If it is difficult for them, they will
Yeah.
disengage. And so in 2018, 2019, I started to kind of have these kind of conversations with folks who I knew in the spaces, sharing information around, different elections, sharing things about what's on the ballot, what these different elections mean, who these candidates are. And people became really receptive to it because I'm just Dawn. So for a lot of folks, they're like, oh, well, I trust Dawn. Like, we're going to listen to her. And so I knew that I had a responsibility to kind of educate everyone, that I knew. And of course, it has blossomed now, and I'm able to
Of
talk
course.
weekly to folks that are running for office, and all of these different things. I'm able to talk to experts in different areas. But even with that, I try to always make sure that folks know that I would never steer them wrong. I'm coming to you as, just Dawn. These are folks who I can vouch for. These are folks that you should hear from. And so since then, I've kind of, with my platform, tried to share information around the voting process that folks should know about.
I think it will be I think it will be silly to ask you how important is one's vote. We've heard, your Snoop Dogs of the world and a few other names that I can throw out there that continue to you know, challenge the importance of the vote. And at any level, I think it's a no-brainer that one's vote is important. The question about voting, however, that I want to ask you beyond how important one's vote is what value does one's vote hold? It's important to vote, but what value does one's vote hold, especially when we look at the political system in a country like the United States of America? What
Mhm.
would you share with somebody who says, I know it's important to vote, I know I'm going to vote, but I'm beginning to lose the value of the entire process?
Sure. I mean, okay, so two things. I think it's important to acknowledge how hard they continue to make the voting process for everyday people. To acknowledge, like, okay, well, my vote should mean something if they are doing all of this. The Save Act was just passed out of the House recently, and that is a bill that is literally orchestrated to create a barrier for folks to register to vote, which means
Absolutely.
they have to bring more documentation, like their birth certificate and passport, which people don't keep handy. Some folks don't have a passport at all. However, that just passed out of the House. And so when I think of folks who are saying, like, oh, it doesn't matter, I would say first think of how hard they try to make it for you in the first place. And so the second thing is, I would never truly look at the outcomes and results of elections through presidencies. I would never look at the president. And I think when people say that, they are looking at this very federal level. But if we're able to look locally, we have done some great work through voter engagement. I mean, here in Texas, we just flipped a Trump county, literally in a runoff election on January 31st. And so this is a county that was historically red. However, this candidate won. And that was all because folks were getting around this movement and they were energized and they were organized. But it literally came down to a runoff election and everyone having to play a part. And so I would say definitely look locally, because there's been
Yeah.
a lot of history made, especially within the last years, of folks who have really just gotten activated.
With the current spell of Black Republican celebrities, that's what I'm going to call them. What is your take on party affiliation? I'm curious. For those who work in these spaces a lot, what is what and throw in please, as you divulge what your take is, the reality of conservatism
Hmm.
in the conversation.
Yeah. Okay, so I think for me, for me, it definitely, I wouldn't even say a party affiliation. It is more so tied to where do your morals lie.
Mm, mm,
And with that, that goes to a whole nother conversation of where your party affiliation is leading. I do think celebrities who have these large platforms and these large bases have a certain responsibility to their audience, to their fans, or whoever, of what this moment means. Like, how
yeah.
are you going to use your platform to meet this moment? And so, and then I get it, like with wealth, there's a certain level of things that come and they change, things like that. But at the end of the day, for me, it is about what are your values? What is your actual morals? And then also, like, where's your hard line? Like, where's your stop to where you're not wanting to do certain things because you care so much about your community?
Do you think we're the problem? And here's what I mean by we I mean the general population. Do you think we're the problem? And this is what I mean when I say that. You've got your George Clooney's, you've got your Oprah's, Oprah Winfrey's, you've got your Nicki Minaj's. You've and I again I can rattle off more than a few names who pick one camp over the other. And as you know, when elections come around, and not always just at the federal level, sometimes
Mhm,
even down to the state, gubernatorial and lower,
mhm.
you parlay these favors, and that's the only way I can put it. And because these entities do have millions on their platforms, they are listened to. And I am not of the camp that says the LeBron Jameses should just shut up and play basketball. No, you are a citizen living under the same policies that the rest of us have to live in. Do you think we're the problem? Do you think we value those opinions more than we should, to the point that it has actually given those opinions leverage that
Yeah.
shifts things here and there? What's your take on what their role should or should not be when it comes to these types of conversations about what everyday people are going through?
Right. So I think two things. I do think folks like your Nicki Minaj's and George Clooney's and LeBron, I feel like they do, like I said, have a responsibility. I mean, Nicki Minaj is an immigrant, and so like, what is she saying to that community? And so they do play a certain part. They are some of the top donors for a lot of elected officials, and so I think that that's one thing. I think as far as like people actually buying into what they are hearing and kind of following that path, I think if we are able to have a well enough identity of self, it really wouldn't matter if Nicki Minaj is up there with Donald Trump and everyone else, because we know what we know. I think everything in this country has gone so crazy to where people are able to like sit back and be like, okay, she's literally tripping, so I feel like people are able to assess these things on their own. However, I don't think that that takes away from the idea that they should know, they should acknowledge the fact that they have this large platform and so many people are watching them. So
Yay or nay to them being involved in the whole runoff in the way that they're being used? I'm curious. Would you say yes, they should still be these spokespersons that we're using them as, or why do each of the parties keep bringing them in?
I'd say yes. I'd say
You would
yes. I
say
mean, and I'm
yes.
speaking from they should stay. Just speaking from someone who has done campaign work and still does it, because of the relational organizing piece that I was talking about. People are more willing to buy into something that it is someone that they feel like they trust. So if LeBron James is their favorite player and they hear
Yeah.
LeBron saying, "I'm supporting this candidate," they are likely, and so although it's not always for the good, there are
Yeah.
people that would look on TV and say, "Hey, Beyonce was out here for campaigning for this person. Like, we're with it, because we trust
Yeah.
Beyonce." You know.
Absolutely.
So unfortunately, yeah. I mean, I would definitely would say keep it.
So I'm gonna throw, you're gonna be like, whoa, that's a pivot. So I want to throw all of this that we've talked about and bring it to HBCU presidencies. She's like, I'm ready. Let's do this. I don't know if you've kept up on HBCU presidencies over the last few years. Yay, nay?
Not all of them. I mean, TSU's sure, but not like overall.
Okay, okay, okay. What role speaking about voice, to me, our whole conversation has been voice. It's been about voice. It's been about knowing that your voice has movement, knowing that
Hmm.
your voice can be leveraged.
Hmm.
Do you think on HBCU campuses, students have enough voice when it comes to leadership?
No.
No. Okay. How would you change that, Dawn?
Yeah, I mean, I can only give you an experience from Texas Southern University
Of
because that is
course.
modern, but even so, we have our current president. Not many folks really know who this person is. However, we seem to understand that he's a little bit more conservative. And because of that, it has kind of changed the dynamic in which we do things at, homecoming. And our homecoming was changed up. But it was so much to where the students and the alumni started to genuinely feel powerless. So
Mm,
time of homecoming, we were all organizing together and coordinating, like, okay, hold on, like we're losing the plot here. Like, how can we come together to enforce our demands around the school that we love? And so I don't think that students are their opinions are acknowledged enough. But I think if alumni and student, I want to say students too, but definitely alumni stay engaged. Also monetarily, with all the things, we are able to say, hey, like this is the school that we know and we love, and we have this and this, and this is also what we're demanding. And so yeah, we kind of got together and organized, and we were like, listen, this is what we normally do. I don't know what you're thinking, but
yeah.
we are representing our school. Yeah.
So I'm happy to hear that about TSU. I'm asking this question, I'm going to shift it from students to alum because I do think alum could have more power than students do on any given day, and students also often fair retribution. So they're going to go but so far.
Right.
But there've been two persons that I've spoken to recently. One of them, he does not mind putting it out there. Gosh, Lewis Manley the third. He is the documentarian behind Tuskegee 100, and it's a celebration of Tuskegee University's past 100
Mhm.
homecomings, and he has zero support from the institution, and it led down a road of our institutions often knock on the doors of alum, and I'm a two-time HBCU alum as well, and it's true for me as well. That
Mhm.
our institutions often knock down the doors of HBCU alum when it comes time for donations. And I don't know what the percentages are on a national average, but some show up, and some show up big, to be extremely honest with you. Spelman, I think, has got one of the largest alumni givebacks, but anyone that says HBCU alum don't, that's not true. They do. It's just changes from institution to institution, but they're not listened to as well. And it seems like a no-brainer. And you're smarter than I am, Dawn. So I want you to share. Yes, you are. I want you to share. I'm trying to figure out the why. That's where this question is coming from. If you're going to knock down my door when there's money to be gotten from me, and you know I love my institution, but I want to love with accountability, not just love for the sake of loving, and then we're just going to ignore some of the issues there. Why aren't there better relationships? And I hear this a lot from alumni.
Mhm.
Um, why aren't there better relationships, or how could we actually get better relationships with our institutions? And I know you're going to make it about TSU, and I appreciate that, but it could be modeled elsewhere depending on how you would suggest it for TSU.
Sure. I mean, for most universities, they have a group called a board of regents, and those are ultimately the folks who make the decisions. I would become so invested in who is being appointed to those roles. One thing
Mm.
that we saw is that these folks that were coming into these roles had no tie-in to Texas Southern University. They had no sorts of actual interest in, our culture or our college experience at all. And that is where folks were like, okay, well, hold on here. Um, there's a certain amount of funding that does come from the state and things like that, and so I think those are relationships that will always play a part. But I think if alumni are able to attend things like the meetings that the board of regents have, those are live streamed, they're also open to the public. I don't know if everyday people can be a part of that voting session, but we could be there. And so, like I said, for me, that was where I kind of woke up of like, oh, I got to be more involved because these decisions are being made without us. And so, yeah, like when we are able to see the decisions that are being made from the folks at the top, we need to figure out how we can be a part of that and have a seat at that table.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's as you were talking, my brain is going through the list of the Board of Regents at my different alums and asking questions. I love it. I love it. Listen, Dawn, you are amazing. I think you already know that. I don't need to tell you that. Um, there's so many things I could have asked you without going down a rabbit hole of politics the entire time, because I could easily do that as well. But is there anything that you're like, hey, Tosin, I absolutely need to share this before I leave or before we end our conversation? What would that be? And please bless our audience with it.
If I could bless the audience with anything, it would be choose a HBCU. HBCU is where I learned family and community. Like I said, I am still tied into many of my professors. I am still tied into a bunch of my friends there. But I think ultimately, HBCUs are the home of family. We look
Mm.
out for one another. We care about each other's success. And we have just that kind of togetherness that I don't know if I've seen anywhere else. So I would say choose a HBCU.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Choose, listen, for better or worse, is what she's saying. Choose an HBCU.
Okay, because it does get hard, but don't stay the course.
Stay the course. She has said stay the course so many times, and I absolutely agree with her. Listen, Dawn, thank you so much for being my guest on this episode of I Love My HBCU question mark. I know that it is impossible for especially students to listen to this episode or watch this episode and not feel activated about just asking themselves, what can I do in small spaces around my community? And I hope I've done a good job of encouraging you to subscribe to I Love My HBCU question mark. Guys, if you haven't checked out Pretty in Politics yet, it's every single week. Check her out on Instagram. You are going to love the way she breaks things down. I think that's what I love the most about listening to you on your podcast is, oh, I get it. Oh, that's what they meant to say. Oh, I get it after after you've broken it down.
I love that.
um Listen, yours in HBCU love. See you next episode. And Dawn, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to I Love My HBCU question mark. Let's keep the conversation going as we share our stories and encourage more practical support of HBCUs, whilst of course holding each other accountable. Don't forget to follow and subscribe for the latest episodes. Until next time, love and lift your HBCU.